it still is one of the most shocking revelations and things to happen, I would say, in their tenure. Right. I would say first and foremost, that trade up kind of came out of nowhere when they went 12-3 was pretty nuts. But that was a legit surprise. It's just draft time. You never know. Trades happen. I just think we talked about this yesterday on our emergency pod after we already did a podcast. It was just something you didn't expect. It was just not an expectation of mine that it was even an option for him to come back. And maybe part of it was I wouldn't think Jimmy would want that. And then the more time you have to think, you realize, I think one area of leverage before we get into Kyle's belief in Trey, the franchise's belief in Trey, their belief in Jimmy being a hedge and all that stuff, is that on a most basic level, their greatest leverage in a position where they wanted the guy back is Jimmy Garoppolo was not getting $6.5 million anywhere else. And the Niners had his amount of money, right, $25+ million, and that was the amount of money they had to play with. So once the Browns were not interested, it feels like at all, maybe if they cut him, they would have given him a very, very cheap deal. Jimmy Garoppolo was not getting $6.5 million anywhere else. I think that is a borderline fact. And that was the 49ers' leverage. They can say whatever they want, the kumbaya, they talked it all out. But I think from a strictly financial standpoint, and this is a business first and foremost, him and Don Yee had to just look like, Jimmy, you're not getting $6.5 million potentially. Let's say his biggest offer would have been $3 million, and it might have been the Browns, but hey, you're not starting right away. With Jacoby, he's already been here. Maybe you start a couple games in if it's going. It could just be a herky-jerky situation. You will go with Seattle where everyone thinks they're going to suck, and they might suck. That's pretty risky, and they're only going to give you a couple $1 million. We will give you $6.5 million. So beside all the fact that, hey, Trey might get replaced in a couple weeks if he's not playing well or whatever, from a money standpoint, I think Jimmy by far, it's been the live PGA Tour thing. He was getting the most money, black and white, with the 49ers. Do you agree with that?
Mostly. I mean, Kyle Shanahan made it repeatedly clear that the situations that might have been available to Jimmy were not very good. So, yeah, maybe Seattle was offering I'm just using Seattle as an example. Maybe Seattle was offering 4.5. We'd have to look at their cap and see what they were able to offer. Maybe they weren't offer. It's very possible some of these teams were not able to offer the bonuses and escalators that the Niners were able to offer Jimmy, right? Like maybe someone could have offered him 6.5, but they couldn't have given him playtime bonuses that would have equated to $14, $15, $16 million like the 49ers could. I think that's very possible too. I do think it's possible that Jimmy looked around and looked at the landscape, and this is what Kyle said.
I got Seattle at 11 mil.
Yeah, so right, even if they could have offered him $6.5 million, the situation's not necessarily better, and they could not have offered him playtime if something happens to Trey Lance tomorrow and Jimmy starts 17 games. Bonuses that equate to the number that the Niners have given him, right up to, I think, $16 million.
I think there's a big difference because I think Seattle with 11, and obviously the Browns have a ton of what their available money is and what they told Don Yee that if he's released, what their contract offer would be. And yeah. I think it's fair to say that all his contract offers, if released and was just a free agent, were all going to be less than 6.5. And I think at this point in time, by the time the deal was signed with Jimmy, they knew exactly what the other numbers were, right?
Yep.
They'd only had 6 months to figure it out.
It had so much time to figure it out. Listening to Kyle and John Lynch today, we talked on Monday about what are the things they would say, the tone they would set. It was very clear that both of them, or at least they made it clear that both of them were very happy about the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo is back on their team. And you could almost tell that they were both surprised that it came to this. Kyle Shanahan and Mayoko asked a good question. He said, I don't understand. Why is he not practicing? Why is he not in meetings if you thought this was a possibility? And what Kyle Shanahan said was, because I thought the chances of this happening were slim to none. And he said that he'd told Jimmy a while back, hey, whatever situation, you go find your situation. If you can't find the right situation, we'd love to have you back here as a backup. And then he said Jimmy saw the other situations. The last third preseason game passed. Nobody created a need by an injury. And it would not have been right to have him out there practicing at $24 million, which I do think is logical, right? You can't have him practicing at $24 million, have him get hurt, and now you have guaranteed him $24 million. Because one thing Kyle Shanahan said was, under no circumstances were we paying Jimmy Garoppolo that money to be on this team. Like, that was not – he didn't say it exactly that way, but that's what he said.
Well, you could not have a backup quarterback making $25 million. That's just you can if the guy gets benched during the season, But you cannot go into the season if the guy's not going to be like no business.
So do you agree with that
world.
logic? You couldn't have him get hurt in practice, or would you have practiced him on the slim chance that you would have had him back?
I agree with if he's willing to do what he did, which he was, he capitulated with what you needed to happen. He played a huge role in them enabling this whole situation to play out. I think we've said over and over, most guys would not have done that. I would say every guy would not have done that, not named Jimmy Garoppolo. So yeah, you could not you couldn't risk someone falling on his leg, and we had bullshitted a little bit. I mean, kind of tongue in cheek, but put him in a preseason game, you definitely couldn't do that.
Right.
A broken leg, boom, 25 mil. Because that also takes away the ability to like next year, could you trade a second round? If some sweet player becomes available this off season, or I mean during the season, you have a ton of cap space to make a trade. Hey, we'll give our second round pick for, I just pick a sweet player that becomes available that they might need, right? That's part of why you always want to have cap space. Like having cap space when you're a good team is a very valuable thing. That's why some good teams,
what did Emmanuel Sanders cost when they acquired him?
Yeah, probably not nothing. I mean, they gave a second or third and a fourth round pick. I mean, remember they traded a decent amount of cap space.
Yeah.
Or I mean, a decent amount of draft capital.
Yeah.
I do 100% believe him under no circumstances. If Trey Lance had gotten hurt, I think they still would have been like, we got to redo this contract. Jimmy's contract was getting redone no matter what.
Yeah,
maybe not
Lance got hurt. They would have had much less leverage to force Jimmy.
They would have, but maybe it would have been cut in half and then incentivized to where you can make like $30 million. But it was, let's face it. Do you think the Jimmy Garoppolo we saw last year, relative to the rest of the league, you got to factor in what everyone's making, is a $26 million quarterback? Is that probably right around his value?
Yeah, I think he's probably a $21 million quarterback, $23 million quarterback, which is not, with that, to me, like the real answer is let's go look at like what top 15 money is. And I put him right around there.
The problem is there's not really that, right? Because his little group, he's the worst of like, obviously the Dak, the Cousins, the Carr, those guys are better than him. Yeah. They all make $40 to $48 million.
Yeah. I mean, the world where Sam Darnold makes 18, Jimmy Garoppolo's easily worth 26. Yeah. If Sam Darnold's 18, Jimmy's his true value is probably 37. If we just said Sam Darnold's 18, what's Garoppolo worth? I'm not saying you'd pay Garoppolo 37, but he's much better than Sam Darnold. Much, 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 much better than Sam Darnold.
Sam's deal is really not a negotiated deal. It's just he lucked into getting his 5th-year option picked up, right? Him and Baker fall into that category. It's not
it's not
someone paid him.
You're right.
But I know what you're saying. But you know why? Because the Jimmy does not exist in his price point range, like $18 to $25 million. That player doesn't exist, does it? Who you're like, we could start the whole season with this guy and compete to make the playoffs. That guy does not exist.
No.
You're either making like Mariota Trubisky money, or you're face it. If you're a starter, you're basically 38 and above. If you're not on a rookie contract, there is no middle ground anymore. There's no. How about that guy on that 3-year, $60 million deal? Love that one.
Well, you're getting overpaid. You're getting underpaid until you get overpaid, right?
Yeah.
Like Kittle, underpaid, but he was really underpaid before that.
Yeah, he gets screwed by his position.
Yeah, it's just in football, you tend to get paid for what you're about to do. Like baseball, you get overpaid at baseball because you get paid for what you did.
Yeah.
Football, you get overpaid for what you're about to do, but you may not get overpaid.
Well, unless you're that Julio guy with Seattle and they're already giving him, $140 million. It seems a little crazy.
You about DK?
I'm talking about the baseball player for the Mariners.
Oh, Julio Rodriguez, 10-year contract. Or whatever. It's a massive contract.
But he's a rookie.
He's fantastic. He's a star.
Yeah, but I mean, so was Tatis until he got popped for doing drugs. So it's
well, yeah, but Tatis will come back and still be a.
I'm just saying, like, I would say in baseball now they are paying some of these young guys before they've really done much.
Yeah, but I think they're paying them numbers that you can, in the end, what does it equate to? $14 million a year?
Yeah, $140 million.
Is that what his deal was? Like 10 years, 140?
Yeah, with a bunch of escalators.
Carlos Rodon was making more money. You know what I mean? Like, it really aren't. They're not contracts that kill you. That's the beauty of it. If you sign 10 guys to those contracts. Anyway, I thought listening to John and Kyle today, MIDDLEKAUFF, they sounded like two guys who felt lucky. They found themselves a safety net that they didn't think they were going to have. And we could say that they overvalue. Some people say they overvalue Jimmy, right? That they shouldn't be shocked that there was nowhere for Jimmy to go, that they value Jimmy more than the rest of the league does. But, I think their view clearly, and they made the point to say repeatedly, hey, backup. I told Jimmy you can come back as the backup. We told Jimmy you can be Trey's backup. We told Jimmy, what you did, what Trey did for you last year is what he's doing for Trey this year. And Trey's happy about it. Trey likes him. All right. They said all of that stuff that you would expect him to say. I think the bottom line is they're pretty happy about the way it worked out, which is, I think, pretty amazing when you consider when Jimmy got surgery, they were not happy at all about the way it was working out. Right.
Yeah. Which because they were on the losing end of a deal. Like that's the reason. I thought that was pretty crazy that they got mad with a guy who was injured and got surgery. I know the communication, which we found out they're not the greatest communicators back and forth. I have no issue. I thought they were kind of in the wrong on being mad there. I understand in their position, like, this sucks. But it's like, yeah, I mean, this guy got hurt on your watch. Like, I didn't blame Jimmy Garoppolo for not like you're getting rid of me no matter what. I'll get the surgery when I get the surgery.
Yeah. I don't blame him either.
Sports a lot.
Sometimes you get lucky. And the Niners have gone from unlucky to lucky to unlucky to lucky to I don't even know. This whole thing with Jimmy is, I mean,
well, we said it yesterday. Yeah, we said it yesterday. In a vacuum, he's the best deal in the league at $6.5 million. But these aren't robots. And you can tell me over and over how great people are, how good of friends they are. And I saw, you were listening, I saw some quotes, like they hammered that home, how close they think those guys are. They're good buddies. I still think there's a fine line with this shit when the pressure amps up. And I don't know, some struggle happens. Jimmy had struggled before, right? Jimmy had been the starting quarterback and had ups and downs. He was a 7th, 8th year, 29-year-old who had been dog cussed for 3.5 years by Belichick, who had gone through the ringer with Kyle, who's the oldest soul, 43-year-old you'll ever meet in your life, who's hard on quarterbacks and offensive players, to a young guy who has just really experienced it for a year. To me, it's just it's a human dynamic bet on high character stuff, which I don't care how great of a human you are. And the character, let's just give both these guys pluses, which I think it's fair to say that so far through their careers, Jimmy definitely falls under that. And what we've seen of Trey seems like a high-level guy. Everyone likes him. It's a big, things happen. The pressure, envelope or pendulum swings the other way in terms of now it's on this guy. We know Jimmy can handle it, but Trey has never been in this position. No disrespect, and Marty Morningwig hammered this home, and I'll never forget it. Like, the game because he was a Montana guy, and he's like, because I was like, this is not a big game. This is a big game. He's like, every game is a big game to the people that are involved in that game, right? You're doing UC Davis Cal this weekend. That game for UC Davis, my dad fucking loved UC Davis football and basketball, but football specifically. And when they beat Stanford 15 years ago or whatever, to UC Davis people, and who knows how many people were at that game. Honestly, if we look back, might have been 4,000 people, and 3 of them might have been UC Davis fans because Stanford was awful. You know the pride that program had in winning that game?
I remember that.
They'll still talk about it to this day.
I remember my dad calling me to tell me about it. I'm like, I know. He was listening on the radio.
Do you know what it would mean for UC Davis to beat Cal this weekend? And let's say Cal turns out to be a 4-win team. They don't give a shit. Just like North Dakota State, every game Trey Lance started in that 1 year was a enormous deal in that community. So, like, in that community, he's felt pressure. But it's fair to say it's just bigger in the NFL, especially for this franchise, who I don't know was a Final Four team. And then you factor in anytime you're a player in I've always felt this, and this is why Leatherwood is a story today. When you are known, and Solomon Thomas and Reuben Foster and Cleveland Farrell, ones that when you are so-and-so first-round pick, like part of the reason Dak and Russell are this like found money, even Derek Carr and Jimmy Garoppolo, it's like when you're not a second-round pick and on, it's all gravy. It's all gravy, whether you're Debo or Kittle. When you are first-round pick, and then when you're a top 3 pick that they traded the farm for, there are all these other variables with this player that no one knows from a human element. If just this added part, like, I like Jimmy, bring him in. He probably said that. Clearly. I mean, they said that they had been talking to him the last couple of days, both parties, right? And trying to make sure everyone's on the same page. And they needed to get Jimmy's number a little lower than Trey Lance's number, that Belichick dynamic. I do think it's a different deal 2 picks against Seattle and you get upset week 2, like, are they still kumbaya sitting next to each other in the meeting? Does I guess Brian Greasy might not say this, but if Kyle was in there, like, this is what Jimmy would have done, Trey. Well, you watch Hard Knocks, that gets said all the time. Like, this is what this guy's doing. Like, that's just the way coaches talk. Now, Brian probably keeping his. How about that sneaky tough position for that guy to be in? He's never fucking been a position coach. He's never been a coach, and now he's dealing with this dynamic. I know he's been a player, and he's backed up, and his dad's a famous player, but that's not nothing, because there are going to be times when it's just Brian with those guys and Kyle's doing, press conference or dealing with John Lynch or who knows what, right? That's a lot of pressure on to me, McDaniel, and even when LaFleur was here, those guys had been in the league a long time, even though they're less accomplished, famous names and stuff. But like all those guys had seen the Matt Ryan situation, had seen the RG3 and Kirk Cousins situation. They could just kind of feel it out. This guy hasn't been in a position room, even as a player, in a decade plus. It's sneaky lot of pressure on a position coach who's a first-time ever coach.
Yeah, I mean, the players control, like the Niners are making a bet on Trey Lance here. And it also feels like they might be making a bet against Trey Lance here. The bet on Trey Lance is that mentally he can handle it. The real question is, are they simply just taking the value in Jimmy Garoppolo that has fallen in their lap? Or are they also making a bet against Trey? Right? That's the question. And the Niners want us to believe that it's not a bet against Trey. It's simply value has fallen in our lap.
Well, we said that we said that yesterday. It was a lock. They were going to say that, right?
Of course. But it may be true. We don't know yet. Time will tell. We'll find out, right? We'll find out. Because I do think you can make the argument, if you say, and you said it, we talked about it, every team would take Jimmy Garoppolo as their backup at $6.5 million, right?
Yes.
So that exists, period. That is true. The question is, do they feel like they really need him, or they're going to need him? And when is Kyle Shanahan willing to go to him? Is he just there as a backup? There's all kinds of different backups. There's backups that need to have their helmet in their hand, and there's backups that aren't playing unless the starting quarterback gets hurt, right?
Would the Cardinals have done this? Would the Eagles have done this? Would, just pick some teams with young quarterbacks who have started more? You'd probably say no.
You could argue that they wouldn't do it, and the reason the Niners can is because they clearly, and this is what John and Kyle repeatedly, they bet on their ability to manage, to have the right personalities in the room and manage those personalities. And they are walking a fine line again, just like they walked a fine line last year trying to develop Trey but keep Jimmy the starter. They're walking a fine line again this year.
Much easier then, because Jimmy was the incumbent. No matter what was said on the outside, Kyle wasn't going to pivot. This one, I think it's fair to say the roles are reversed. I think the majority of fans that you would poll and people on the outside just like give Trey the year. I think it's inarguable now that Kyle questions, because this is not the Jags, this is not the Bears, and this is not the Jets, where if any of those teams had done this, you'd be like, what are we doing? Just let the young guy play. I'm just using that. Obviously with Trevor Lawrence, they wouldn't, but you know what I mean. You had a second-year quarterback, you drafted in the first round, let the fucking guy play. We're going to be bad. We're going to be 5, 6, 7 win, whatever. Let them play. This, to me, he is not in like, let's just figure it out on the fly. He is trying to win playoff games. Like that is, he talked about it in the brick by brick thing, the opening. Like they are here to get back and make a run. None of those other teams are, right? So like this notion that he has just full belief, I think now we know he just does not. Now, I think outside and the internet, and we've been argued with, has much more belief than Kyle Shanahan. Just like last year, the internet wanted to see Trey Lance a lot more than Kyle Shanahan. But to me, it's flip-flopped.
We'll see, right? Because it's a lot easier to say, I want to see Trey Lance. Are those same people now going to say, I want to see Jimmy Garoppolo, or is it just a different segment of people?
I'm talking about today, though. Like, I think the belief of the unknown and this guy, like, don't make that big a deal about some missed throws in practice like Kyle does. Like, that bothers him. That makes him nervous.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If he was not nervous and had 100% belief, I even think the value, Jimmy Garoppolo's cut.
Yeah, the irony is that Jimmy makes everybody nervous, right? Jimmy makes Kyle nervous. Kyle calls timeouts sometimes if the ball's on his own 15-yard line with a minute and a half left instead of driving the field because he doesn't believe. Now, other times they make drives. But
the difference is there's a known and an unknown. And to Kyle, that means a lot.
I agree. I do agree, except what I know about Jimmy Garoppolo is that he's also inconsistent. Like, I know that about him, right? is that he was on the verge of being replaced last year by Trey. That's the irony.
Yeah.
Jeep says, why do you guys act like he still will not get traded? We're not acting that way. He could get traded in October if Trey Lance has played really good football.
Yeah.
I don't expect it, though. Because as we talked about yesterday, they need a first or a second rounder, maybe a third rounder, since they'll get a third rounder when he leaves. It's compensation. But also, if you believe that he is a safety net as a backup in case your quarterback gets hurt and you think your team's good, then you don't trade Jimmy Garoppolo on October 7th, even if Trey's playing.
No, it's November. So you got 2 months. Remember,
or November, October 30th, whatever. I'm just saying, I think Trey being good and the team being good doesn't necessarily make you more likely to trade Jimmy, because you go, I'm good. Why would I? Trey's still one play away from needing Jimmy.
Yeah.